So you mentioned before we started this interview that you've had some insights about your childhood experience with being part of the Jim Jones Church before, obviously, Jonestown, where 900 people were either mass suicide or were forced into that position. But you said that there is a link between that experience, that childhood experience, and your near-death experience. Do you want to share the insight and maybe talk a little bit about that Jim Jones experience? Because that's pretty unusual.
So I totally believe the healing, if it didn't come from Jim, it came through Jim. Jim participated in my healing. 65 years, Jim Jones held me up, and this black smoke went through me. And I'm 71 and my lungs are still in completely perfect, 100% healthy condition. I remember one of the doctors talking to my mom and says, it's just a miracle. I mean, we can't explain it any other way. And I continued having follow-ups every now and then, but there's never been one bit of scar tissue in my lungs.
My guest today is David Parker, who had a near-death experience, but that is not going to be the most interesting part of our conversation. For 42 years, David has been a hospice nurse. He has witnessed over 3,600 deaths, and he has developed a meditation technique to communicate with his patients. As a child, he was also part of the Jim Jones Church, and he witnessed the Phoenix Lights UFO in 1997. So we've got a lot of ground to cover today. David, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming. You have such an extraordinary, interesting life. But I think where I'd like to start, since most people tune in for the near-death experiences, is I'd really like to start with your near-death experience, and I'll let you tell it in whatever way you'd like to share it.
This happened when I was a child, probably around 5 years old. And we were raised out in the middle of nowhere. We had a little tiny farmhouse. We had no indoor plumbing. We had chickens in the yards and an outhouse and a well in the backyard. And somewhere along the way, I kept developing lung infections. And I spent the better part of 3 years in a hospital, in and out of the hospital. My mom was a school teacher, so she was able to quit and tutor me at home and take care of me. And I would go into the hospital sometimes several weeks at a time and then get to come back home. But my lungs over time, the healthy tissue, lung tissue, was replaced with scar tissue. So it was more and more difficult for me to breathe. And the physicians actually didn't think that I was going to live beyond childhood. So one time I was in the hospital, some event happened, and I remember the staff running in and they were all over me. Back then, this is about 1960, the bed was covered in plastic and they would pump oxygen into the bed. Now we have little nasal prongs that just put the oxygen right where you need it. And they were on me and they were doing things and sticking me. And it was very painful and fearful. And all at once, just like the whole room went silent. And there was just like light around me. And I remember just getting out of bed and just walking right through everybody that was working on me, the nurses, the doctors. And I walked through the room that I was in, the hospital room, and out the doorway and into the hallway. And it was a big hallway. It was an old hospital. It's probably long since gone now. And high ceilings, very wide hallway. And there was people walking back and forth. There was nurses and patients and people in wheelchairs. I could see them clearly, but evidently they couldn't see me. And in the hallway, there was this ball of people, massive ball of people, maybe a couple hundred. And it was a perfect sphere of bodies. They weren't clothed. They were off-white. It looked like a pen and ink drawing of people and forms and swirling in and out, their arms, their legs, their heads. There was like a massive ball of people in constant motion, and they looked like they didn't have bones because they were able to bend in ways that there's no way a physical person could bend, and swirling in and out, and a head would come out of, under someone's arm, and their mouth would just stretch like this big, stretch bizarrely, um, out of proportion. And then they would disappear back into the ball, and somebody else would be coming out. And this swirling went on and on. And I just stood there staring at it. And it took up like the ceiling to the floor and hallway to hallway. And I could see visitors and the nursing staff and whatever human physical people walking right through the ball. I used to call it a sphere of souls walking through it. They didn't see it at all, but it looked three dimensional. It wasn't just like a round circle, a total sphere this way, in all directions, swirling and swirling. And I'm just staring at it. And this is interesting because it comes up again later on in my life. And as I'm staring at it, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel misery. It was just a visual of whatever activity that these people, these souls, whatever they were, they're doing whatever it is that they need to be doing. And I'm doing whatever I need to be doing. That was just a feeling I got at the time. As I'm staring at them, up to my left comes this little girl, and she has dark hair, and it's pulled back and it's braided, very thick braid going down the back of her, down her back. And she was in like a little checkered pinafore, and she had like little black shoes, and she had this great big smile and a little chip in her tooth. And she comes up to me, "Hey, Juice, do you want to go play?" And I'm like a kid. I was like, "Well, sure. I mean, who doesn't want to play?" So I leave the hallway in the church, in the hospital. I leave the sphere of people swirling around, and we go to the left. And and going back later, there is no garden to the left from that spot, but we went out into a garden, and there was these other children playing. There was teeter totters and jungle gyms, a couple kids bouncing balls back and forth. And there was this thing called a maypole. I had never seen a maypole before. And it wasn't until later when I described it to my mom, she told me what it was, this thing with a rope and you run around and twirl it. So this little girl and I are playing and having a great time. And she introduces herself to me. She goes, "My name's Penny." "Well, my name's David." She goes, "Well, let's play." And we play, and it was sunny and bright. I don't remember seeing the sun. It looked like it was pasture all around. It was very serene, and we were having a great time. And then she stops and comes up to me and she says, "We can play a little bit longer, but you can't stay here." And why not? I mean, this is fun. It's better being sick. 'Cause I felt great. I don't remember breathing or needing to breathe, but there was no more pain in my body. So we play a little bit longer, and then she says, "You're going to have to go back." And from her, I got an image of this woman, and I recognized it as one of the nurses that's taken care of me for a long time. And she says, "This is my mom. Tell my mom hello." And I thought, well, why don't you just come in and tell her yourself? And it was like, "No, you got to go back." And I remember just somehow like drifting back. And pretty soon I'm back in the bed. All these people are working on me, but they're starting to leave. Whatever medical uh, emergency I had, whatever it was being resolved. And I'm back in bed, and they put the plastic back over me, and they're pumping in oxygen. And, that was the end of that until later that night. And my mom's there and coming in, and she stays with me. And this nurse comes in. It's the nurse Penny's mom. And she's taking care of me and doing things. And my mom and she became friends because of the frequency of our visits. And when she's taking care of me, I look up and I said, "I saw Penny today." we went out and we went and played. And she told me to tell you that she loved you. And I described her and the outfit that she was wearing and the little chip in her tooth. And the woman looked at me like I just grew horns. She just freaked out. And she left the room. I never saw her again. And my mom, who stayed in communication, she quit. And Penny had been her daughter that had died years before. She was ice skating and the ice broke and she went underwater. And she had attended a Catholic school, and that was the outfit, the uniform that they wore in the Catholic school. She had very thick, long, braided hair, and she had a little chip on her tooth, exactly the way I described her. So it's interesting with my near-death experience, and I hear other people, they have all these wonderful universal insights, and mine was just simple. But I got the validation from the nurse that the person that I saw in my near-death experience was a real person. And there was a message for me to give to her mom. And my feeling is, because I think about that woman after all these years, and I'm sorry I upset her, but maybe she got the message that she needed to help process, to know that the daughter's still alive, still thinking of her, still happy, that life still goes on. So that
Wow. Oh my gosh, David. So, one of the things I noticed about you telling that story is that when you connected to Penny and she said to go tell her mom that you loved her, you got emotional. What was that?
um, what a blessing for me to get to share her message with her mother. That the pain that her mother probably was going through, I would imagine, and to be a nurse and a caregiver, and she's processing the love for her daughter to her work, to we the patients that got to receive that love. What a wonderful blessing that has been through my whole life. And probably how, and one of the reasons I became a nurse myself, and I'm 71 and I'm still a nurse. It's who I am. It's who I became. And I think Penny and her mom had a pivotal part in all of that. You know, my patients have been my best teachers.
Hmm.
So
That's incredible. So you were how old when you had this experience, you think?
I was probably 5 or 6. I think it was like 1959, 1960. I was born in 54. So it was around there like that. And it's interesting, for a long time, I just kind of thought of this as an isolated incident. But over time, and especially recently, I'm starting to see the connection between my near death experience and things that happened later on in my life, and perhaps even earlier than this. Um, yeah, I got a little better, but not all that better. And it was still a big issue with the scar tissue in my lungs. Though I made it through my near death experience, my lungs were still horribly scarred. It's like, I could barely speak a sentence. I forget going out and getting to play. I would just be too winded. And my
Well,
mom,
maybe that's why you were so excited to play when she asked you to play and you didn't have any pain.
no huffing and puffing. It was wonderful. I can see it right now. I can see the playground. I can see the lighting. I can see the color. There's other kids at a distance. I couldn't see them clearly, but I can see Penny. I can see her face clearly right now.
So what do you think that was? Do you think you went to heaven? Do you think that that was another dimension? Do you think that that was a portal maybe in the hospital? What do you think that was? You've had a lot of time to think about this.
I think, and of course, I don't know, and I don't want to read too much into things. I like to keep things as much as factual because everybody's got their own take, on a situation. I love hearing what other people think. I do think I had an out of the body experience. I think I was pure consciousness and soul. I was in a joyous state. Um, and I was in a pain-free body. And whatever the things were, the swirling mass of people, which later showed up in my life years later, whatever they were doing, I was allowed to see them. I was allowed to be a witness to their activity. Um, and then Penny, I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence that I ran into her. Or was she just hanging around her mom? And when I came along, she, "Oh, let's grab David," or was it meant to be? Were we drawn together for a purpose? A blessing for her mom.
Or
What?
not just for her mom, but you said that you've thought about this incident every day, and you had mentioned that you believe that Penny and her mom were a part of you becoming a nurse.
There's like a big picture. We
For
see little
sure.
bits of it, and but sometimes when you kind of just sit back and let the universe in its own time reveal itself to you, that's when you get the insight. That's when I kind of get most of my insight. I kind of put things out of my mind and let the universe, take control, because it does anyway. It's in control anyway. It's kind of funny when we think we are, but um, and again, it's just progressed, just more and more and more opened up with this whole incident.
Well, and I think it also may have played a part in opening you up to being more sensitive as you were going to go into the nursing. But I want to go back to the sphere of souls. I've watched, read, and listened to many, many, many thousands of definitely near-death experiences. I've never heard of anybody having an experience quite like this with the sphere of souls. At 5 or 6, were you old enough to even understand what you were seeing?
Yeah. You know what? And that's a good question. When you're out of the body, are you 5 or 6?
Mm.
Mm. Yeah. So I was wondering, was that presented to me at that time? Because I ran into them 6 more times later on as a nurse, always in healthcare facilities, never in a non-healthcare facility. I saw the exact same thing. I don't know if it's the same souls or beings or consciousness or whatever it is that they are, but they looked and behaved exactly the same 6 more times while I was at work. So I'm not out of the body. I'm physically taking care of patients, and there they are in either a hospital or hospice setting. The same thing happening, and this time I'm seeing visitors and other nurses walking right through it, but I'm seeing it in my body through my physical eyes. So it might have been my spiritual eyes that actually saw this here, but they look totally solid. But they're like outlines, like painting drawings, and they're off white. And so, maybe how you would draw a ghost. I mean, maybe this is where the drawings of ghosts came from, because that's exactly what they look like, and swirling in and out and around. And I feel things. Impressions come to me as feelings, and I didn't feel any misery from any of these beings. I didn't feel they were punished. I didn't feel that they needed help. I I don't know what their purpose was, that they're doing this activity, but for whatever reason, there's an importance for me to have witnessed it. And whatever it is, if it's a problem or a solution or a blessing or something negative, I just automatically thank it. I thank it for being what it is and appearing in my consciousness, and I let it be. And if these were individual souls going through whatever experience they need to go through, maybe to progress, perhaps into a higher realm, I just send them love. It's like, yeah, here you are. I see you. I appreciate you. Do whatever it is you need to do for your growth. And thank you for letting me see you. And I just let them go.
Wow. So you mentioned before we started this interview that you've had some insights about your childhood experience with being part of the Jim Jones Church before, obviously, Jonestown, where 900 people were either mass suicide or were forced into that position. But you said that there is a link between that experience, that childhood experience, and your near-death experience. You want to share the insight and maybe talk a little bit about that Jim Jones experience? Because that's pretty unusual.
And we were in Ohio, and then we moved to Western Ohio, so we were close to Indiana. And Jim had a church in Indiana, and we had family friends that were members of his church. Anyway, I'm growing up, I'm like, 6 or 7, and am I going to live? Because scar tissue doesn't grow. Scar tissue just stays its own shape. So the physicians were all concerned as my body's growing through adolescence, that scar tissue's not going to grow. Am I going to bleed out? Is my lungs going to rip? Will new tissue grow in somehow and compensate? They didn't know what was going on. So I got x-rays all the time. And I was still taken back to the doctors very frequently for follow-ups. Well, my mom doesn't want to lose her kid. So she takes me to psychics. She takes me to healers. She takes me to, faith healers. I mean, we're going to all this stuff. And my mom saw stuff too, as did my grandmother and my dad. They were all seeing spirits. Our whole family was open to spirit. So it wasn't, a surprise that I would have, an out of the body experience. And especially the thing with Penny, my mom was just so proud. She just thought, well, what a wonderful gift. What a wonderful, lovely thing to do, especially for this poor nursing mother. So one of the things that she did, we went over to Indiana. We went to Jim Jones's church because he would do healings. And so we started going to his church. And what a lovely man he was. And people get very upset with me when I say that. But at the time, this is like 1962 to about 1965. He wasn't killing people back then. He was a marvelous, wonderful minister, and he loved people, and he'd come up and hug us. And we would have like a little Sunday service in the morning, and then we would join the rest of the congregation later on. And he would come down and give us hugs and put us on his lap. I spent 2 Christmases at his house. My mom and he hit it off real well. They became friends. And yeah, I had a 100% wonderful experience with Jim Jones. But there was one thing that I saw, and I'm not sure if how many other people saw it. I brought it up several times in Sunday school, and no one would pretty much respond to it. But the other kids would look at me like they understood. Is it times I would see Jim, it would be like smoke, like a bug eye would cover his eyes, like from here to here, and it would start out thin and get thick and then become thin again, just like this. And other times it would look like really round donuts would be over his eyes, and they were totally black, stuck out a couple inches, completely around his eyes. And he would sometimes just for 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes for the whole church service, I would see this on his face. A couple times it would look like there were canisters going clear back into the back of his head, and there was like a silver light, and you couldn't see the end of it. And I'd sit there, in church, and I hit my mom and say, "Oh, look at Jim's eyes. What's going on with his eyes?" And she would just say, "If it bothers you, don't look at it." And, I'm a kid. It's like, well, mom thinks it's okay, so it's okay. So it was just an observation I would see. Not always. Sometimes like, maybe once a month or sometimes it was every week that I would see it. And there would be another thing that would happen with his abdomen, and he would wear, suits. Sometimes he'd take the jacket off, and it'd be like this round ball of black smoke, bigger than a basketball. And it would kind of float out of his abdomen, stop and float back in, and just float in and out. And I would just look at it. And I brought it up several times in Sunday school. And I said, "Yeah, are you guys seeing this?" I remember several kids wanted to say something, but they would look at the Sunday school teacher and decide not to. And I think somehow that got back to Jim. I would love to know if other people saw this, but I'm sick and he does healings. But during any healing session, I was never included until finally one day after service and everybody's starting to leave, and I'm getting in line to go out the door, and someone puts their arms around me and pulls me back up against them really tight. So like my back was against their front. And I'm a little kid. So as an adult, so they were much taller than I am. So I look up to see who it is, and it's Jim. And I call him Jim because my mom called him Jim. It was Reverend Jim. I just always called him Jim. And so I'm looking up at Jim, and he's looking down at me, and he goes like this, nodding to look down. And I looked down, and there was that ball of black smoke. It was shiny. It looked almost solid, but it still had like a smokiness to it. And evidently it had exuded from his abdomen, where I had seen it many, many times floating out. But it came through my lungs because I'm short and he was tall. So his abdomen would be where my chest and lungs were. And the round ball of this shiny black smoke was coming out of my chest. It went back in, and then it would stop, and then it would come back out again, and then go back in. And there's people standing around watching. The people that hadn't left the church yet, and my mom's standing there. And it just kept happening, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes, and then he let go and walked on, and shook people's hands and didn't say anything more after that. And this happened 2 Sundays in a row. And next time I went to the doctor, all the scar tissue was gone. There wasn't a bit of it left. And I remember the doctor was concerned because it was just healthy, normal lung tissue that totally 100% replaced massive amounts of scar tissue. So the doctor sent me to the hospital because I was healthy. And what a funny thing that was, but they couldn't explain it. So they're coming in and they're putting needles down and tubes down and getting biopsies and trying to understand, what happened. They thought it was something awful had happened to me, but actually it was a total miracle. And finally, I remember one of the doctors talking to my mom, and he says, "It's just a miracle. I mean, we can't explain it any other way." And I continued having follow-ups every now and then, but there's never been one bit of scar tissue in my lungs from the second Sunday that Jim Jones held me up and this black smoke went through me. And another thing, both of those Sundays, as soon as Jim released me and I started walking away, my mom came up to me and opened up my shirt. I was checking for, if there was soot or something on my chest. So I think my mom saw the dark smoke too. At least my mom did. But that was just odd. I wish I would have thought to ask more questions, but you're a kid, and it's just, you want to play and you just want to be happy. So I totally believe the healing, if it didn't come from Jim, it came through Jim. Jim participated in my healing, 65 years ago, somewhere around like that. And I'm 71 and my lungs are still in completely perfect, 100% healthy condition. And what just recently kind of hit me is I've been a hospice nurse for decades. My first hospice job, I worked in an AIDS facility. And back then, AIDS was a death sentence. No one survived it. And I saw the aerosols there at the AIDS facility. I saw it at 2 other hospice facilities. And then I also work part-time, sometimes in the hospital. Sometimes after hospice, you need to see people get better. So I would, I worked in the emergency room for a while. Sometimes I did that and then did hospice part-time, switched it back and forth. It's the nice thing about being a nurse. You get to do whatever you want to. About 1965, Jim left Indiana and went to California, and we never saw him again. And then from California, he went to Guyana, and then all that incident happened. And it was like the late 1970s that Jonestown happened. And my mom and I, it was on the news everywhere. And my mom and I are on the phone. It's like, can this be the Jim Jones that we know? Because he was an absolutely lovely, wonderful, kind, generous man. And the church had a lot of Black people in it. And he was into supporting minority races. And had the Jonestown thing not had happened, he probably would be in history books for working for civil rights and trying to uplift minorities. So I forget what year the Jonestown thing was. And I know they've made movies and documentaries. I've not watched one of them because I wasn't there. That sounds horrific. That's not the man that I knew. So I was just never interested in it. And I've been on newscasts over the years, the last 40 years, every now and then they'll have me on, but they're not really interested in what I have to say because I have nothing but wonderful things to say about Jim. He was marvelous. He made sure that we were fed and hugged, and we make little skits and we do plays for him. And no matter how busy he was, he would stop and watch him and watch us sing and sing with us. He was a marvelous man. But just recently, it just came to me. It was an overwhelming, loving, calm, wonderful, warm feeling. It was like a huge, warm, fluffy blanket was lowered down on me. That's what it felt like. Like the universe was comforting me and gave me some insight that there was a connection between my near-death experiences, meeting Jim, and then what happened at Jonestown, and me living for whatever reason that they died, for me being healed as a child so that I could live a long life and be a healthcare provider and be a hospice nurse. Yet those people all died young. And the feeling was, and I heard one word and I saw some images and I felt this warm glow, like universal, like massive hands supporting me and uplifting me. Is there was there was a purpose and an agreement that all of us made many years ago, at least 65 years ago, or maybe even further back. And that was for Jim participated in my healing. Jim participated in their deaths, and their deaths had to be absolutely horrible. They had to have had misery and fear and hunger, long before that, and then to have, drank what they drank or what happened to each one of them. It had to be a miserable, horrible experience. And it wasn't long after that that I became a nurse and I fell into hospice. And I'm supporting and uplifting soul and body through the final times of their physical experiences. And whatever pain or misery they're going through, we were able to comfort with medicine. We had beautiful warm beds and nice cozy blankets. And if they had loving, wonderful families in, we would move the families in so that they were never alone. And many of our patients that never had family, then the staff, we did it. And I would I put my chair next to their bed, and I had to do paperwork or something as a nurse so that they weren't alone. And I would kind of lean up against them. And every now and then they'd wake up and look at me and smile and know that they weren't alone, to know that they were comforted. And the message I got is all of these souls that died at Jonestown, my mom said a couple of them were friends, and a couple of them were distant family members. I don't remember them. Cycled through cycled through being a hospice patient of mine, or at least attaching themselves to the hospice experience and getting to have somewhat of at least a physical and a spiritual experience of a peaceful, warm, loving death, surrounded. surrounded by people that cared. And not just me, but our hospice staff. I work with such wonderful people. And that every single one of the Jonestown deaths, like audited through a peaceful, loving death. Maybe they reincarnated because I did pediatrics forever, pediatric hospice forever. Or it the image came of like their soul just kind of coming by and just migrating through and being presence in a warm, loving environment connected to Jim because he healed me, he murdered them. He uplifted me and gave me a long life. He or spirit or whatever. He participated in my being able to grow up and to be able to serve people as a nurse. But he shortened everybody else's lives later on in the 1970s. And for whatever, there's a connection and an agreement between them, me, Jim, the whole group, all these years. And it's now complete. And I just felt the last one just audited through. And I just had a pediatric death. So it's about 2 weeks ago. And there was a connection between that death and the last person that needed to have a positive, wonderful experience through the dying process.
That's a beautiful way to see that. One of the things I would like to add, because I have spoken with so many people who have described as they're having their near-death experience that they're being strangled, they're in a situation that would not be a pleasant death, that even though it looked like their body was struggling, they knew what was coming. Their soul knew what was coming, and they had left their body prior to feeling any of those feelings. So for people who are watching and you're afraid that one of your loved ones may have suffered, what I've been shown over and over again is that people do leave their body before that happens. But what you're talking about, David, specifically is one experience of death and then being cycled through as maybe an infant to have a warm, beautiful experience of death. And I do believe that it is one of the functions of these human incarnations are to have these different, varied experiences.
It's and again, I'm not sure they were reincarnated, but certainly it could be. I mean, this experience, this feeling I got just kind of validated different things I've read and heard. And I've heard and read somewhere that families reincarnate, multiple lifetimes.
Yes.
And I've heard that and thought about it. This made that real. This was like the universe opened up of the book of secrets and said, look here, it's on page 97. This is going on. You guys all agreed to all of this ages ago. And I'm thinking, at first I thought, well, it's going back 65 years, though many of those people weren't born yet. I'm feeling that this is even farther than that there is past lives and we do reincarnate or find each other or stay in connection over multiple lifetimes. I really, really, really feel that. It's just like it was revealed to me. And I wasn't thinking about this at all. And I wasn't thinking about the Jonestown. I wasn't thinking about any of that. And it was like, this is it. It's done. It's completed.
Wow. Well, it's just like a soul contract.
And it's just, what a warm, wonderful feeling that was. I was just like lifted. And if they're feeling anything like that, and I'm sure they're probably feeling even more than I am, what a blessing that was. And I saw, it looked like a half of a clock, like from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. It was just a black line. I thought the outline of an image, and then the rest of the circle completed. And I just felt, and message just says the circle is completed. It's
Wow.
everything.
Incredible. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's extraordinary.
I was just, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I saw it. I saw it and I felt it and it was revealed to me. And, what a blessing.
Thank you for sharing that. So you've witnessed now 3,600 deaths, and you have a very, very unique meditation practice that you've developed to communicate with your patients. So will you explain what this is and how this all came about?
With my mom was involved in so many different groups. And we were in the Radha Swamis when I was a kid, and we got into Ekankar, Ancient Science of Soul Travels. And all of those, we learned how to meditate. So I grew up being a meditator. But finally, when I decided to become a nurse, and I barely made it through high school, because my mom was taking me out of school all the time to go see, psychics and mediums and all these people. But I thought, how am I going to get to college? And a friend of mine who was like a semi-famous psychic at the time says there's this class called Silva Mind Control. He says, you really need to take it. And it's a 4-day class, and it's dynamic meditation where you learn all other meditations I've done. You just kind of enter a silence and wait for something to kind of come to you and for a thought or a feeling to appear. This technique that they teach in a 4-day class is dynamic meditation where you actively seek answers. You meditate for a purpose. Say you want a new car or a healing, or you want some insight from someone that's gone on before you, or whatever is important to you. It's how to meditate, relax your mind, relax your body, go into alpha level of brain activity, and you learn to get information from a different source anywhere, physical, spiritual, whatever. And the 4 days you practice it. You practice, they have those little metal balls, and you practice putting your intelligence, your mind inside the metal. And what does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? They teach you step by step by step, and it's all day long for 4 days. And you do like 30 some meditations and practice seeing what it's like to be no longer in your body, but elsewhere getting information. You also practice going inside the body of a pet and going into the body of someone else. And yeah, at the end of the class, you're able to diagnose someone from a distance with no information because you learn that quickly to relax and open yourself up to source. And I used one of those techniques then that I learned in Silva. It's now called the Silva method, and they teach it all over. They teach it on Zoom, is to communicate with my patients before I meet them. And now that I'm doing more, I used to work in inpatient units. We would have 10 beds. I did adult and I did pediatric inpatient for years. And unfortunately, most of them closed due to funding. And now we do home care. So I find out a day in advance, I'm going to have an assignment. I'll meet with them tomorrow. I get very little information, but I use this technique that I learned in the Silva method to relax my mind and body. And I go into my meditation, and I've created like this little living room in my meditation, very comfy. And I'll invite the consciousness, the spirit, whatever, of the infant, the child that I'm going to be the nurse of starting tomorrow. And I'll invite their family, if they choose to, if they feel comfortable, to come and meet with me in my meditative state, in my cozy little living room. And actually, every single time they show up, and I'll get an impression. And very often it's a symbol or something that I don't recognize at the moment. And I'll just thank whatever's been given to me, and I'll release it. And I find out that the next day I get the answer to what it is that I saw. And I got a couple I can tell. tell you?
Yeah, I would love for you to share, especially ones that have some evidential information that were shared that were things you couldn't have known.
Let me tell you one that just wasn't that long ago. Um, so I'm in my meditative state, and we're in the living room. And I know that the child I'm going to be taking care of, she was 8 days old. So I'm going to meet her on day 9th of her life. We get a lot of birth defects. So when I'm in my level and there she is, and I see her family in my meditation standing around her, to the left of me is it looks like 7 angels, little baby angels, like cherubs, but not as fat. They didn't have wings, and their hands were, you can see it, outstretched like this, not praying, but they were kneeling, and they look like glass. And they look like Christmas ornaments. You know how thin that glass is, very delicate. They were clear, but solid. And I kept looking at them. I could see the closest one, and then 6 more on the other side. I don't know if it's him, her, it, of the child. There were 7. And for whatever reason, it was really important for me to see this. And I just felt this incredible flow of love. And it was like coming down, coming through their back, and coming out to their front and going towards the parents, the family. Just this marvelous flow of love. I remember getting goosebumps at the time, and I've got them right now, just recalling this love. The love wasn't for me, but I was getting the overflow of whatever these beings were towards this family. A few other things came to mind, but that was like the really big thing. And I thanked them and let them go, and that was the end of my meditation. So I go the next day, and I get to meet the child. Got to meet the family, lovely little family, and we took care of the child together. I think she lived 3 days and then was dying, massive birth defects. And the day she died, it was the mom and I. The father is on dialysis and had to go get his treatment, so he missed his daughter's death. We do our best to try to pinpoint it, but sometimes things just happen. So I didn't want to leave mom there with a baby, deceased baby. And so I stayed with her till the husband got home, and we did all the things that we need to do. And in this time, this quiet time, she was telling me that it wasn't a surprise that they lost their child because they had been going to a fertility clinic. And anyway, they told her that because of her body, she may lose a child. And she said, but we're still hopeful because we still have 7 more frozen embryos at the clinic. And that was the 7 angels that I saw next to me in the meditation. And the love was pouring through them towards this family. That was consciousness. Were they souls? Were they consciousness? Was it telepathy? Was it just an image I picked up? I don't know. I don't want to read into it, but they were so real. And that love was so real flowing through them. And there's seven more embryos waiting to be born to this family.
Wow. That's pretty profound.
And I didn't know. I didn't know any of that.
So how do you think having the ability to connect with a patient before you treat them, how do you think that that is serving you? And also, do you think that this is a technique that just anybody could learn?
I do think it's something anybody can learn because I have taken the class. I've retaken it many times. I still take it. I've been taking it now for 40 some years, and I still just re-audit the class because I get more out of it every time. And it's amazing after the end of 4 days, people that just feel their spiritual flux are getting all this information. They're getting all this validation. So, we're connected. We're all connected. And I know you know that, and we're connected with spirit and everything. The trick is calming your thoughts down, being able to focus on one thought at a time, and having that desire, belief, and expectancy that you're going to get a connection and validated with an answer. And I think that's the natural state we're supposed to be in at all times. I think whatever blocks us from seeing spirit or participating with spirit, it's baggage we put up between ourself and soul, ourself and the universe, ourself and God, whatever you want to call it. And the only thing we have to do, simple as that, the only thing we need to do is remove what blocks us from the light, because it's always there. It's always there, and it's always shining on us. We may not see it, but it sees us. So what a simple little thing that is just remove what distracts you from looking at the light. And that's what the meditation teaches you. In this class, the Silva method, I learned to focus my thought on one thing at a time, at one thought at a time. And if you learn that in your life, you're in control. There's no more, your thoughts here, there, everywhere, what am I going to have for breakfast? What did I eat yesterday? What's somebody think of me? You can put all those distracting thoughts completely out of your head and think about one thought. And my thought is, how am I going to serve my patient? How am I going to serve the family? And I ask the universe, show me what I can do to make this a better situation. It's hospice. It's never going to be, it's the least worst outcome. Sometimes that's all I can go for. It's all I can hope for. And
I love that you said that, the least worst outcome.
isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. So the last topic that I want to cover, because I talked about this in the intro, is something that I really don't know very much about, despite the fact that I live in the Phoenix area, which are the Phoenix Lights that happened in 1997. So for people who are tuning in who don't know what that is, will you explain that part?
Now, I wasn't into UFOs at all. I mean, I was just at the right place at the right time for whatever reason. But I was working in Mesa, Arizona, lived in Phoenix, and it was a long drive back. It was like 26 miles one way for work. I worked in a 10-bed inpatient hospice unit. And I remember, because I journal and I write all my notes down. That's why I know how many patients, I've had these experiences with. It's just everything's written down. And I had 3 patients die on me at our 10-bed inpatient unit that day. And we would have that frequently. And I don't know if that has anything to do with anything at all, but I just throw it out there. So I'm driving down Route 60 from Mesa to Phoenix, and it was torn up. And every time you went under an overpass, you had to go up over the overpass and get back down on the freeway. And it was all dirt. There was no pavement. They tore it up for years. So there's this one place, I got off on an overpass in Tempe, which is between Mesa and Phoenix. And I don't remember the exit, but when I got off the exit, there was this mound of construction debris, and I drove up on it. Maybe I was supposed to drive around it, but I ended up on top of it, and I was nearly parallel with a freeway streetlight. So it's shining down on me. I have all this bright light. I have the brights of my truck on, and I'm about to go down the hill, and I look out the window of my windshield, and there's this massive boomerang-shaped craft floating towards me. I'm thinking, what on earth is that? I slam on my brakes. I get out of the truck. I'm standing in front of my truck, and it's coming slowly, just over my head. It was the tip of the left wing of the craft was about 30 feet over my head. I was that low, but I was elevated on a hill. And in South Phoenix, the craft was incredibly low, as many other witnesses saw it. And as it's coming up towards me, the headlights of my truck and then the street light right next to me was shining up on it. And I could clearly see that the craft was a solid piece of machinery. It looked like gunmetal gray. It was slightly reflected, and it was covered with thousands of oval-shaped indentations. And the lights that were at the bottom of the craft looked like lava dripping down, and would drip down and stop and form a bulb and go back up, and more streams of what looked like orange lava dripping up and down like an upside down lava lamp. And when I looked at the ground and looked at myself, I was totally orange from the glow of this substance. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to burn because it looks so hot. But it wasn't hot at all. And it didn't blow wind on me. And it didn't make any sound. And it didn't make any odor. And it just floated over me. And as the craft was flying south, I watched it go clear out of sight over Chandler. And it went east of South Mountain. It was trailed by this multi-glowing light, looked like a mist, and it's almost like a wave of multicolored lights sparkling. And when that went over my head, I just got like blasted with love. It was like the most incredible feeling of gratitude, kinship, family, caring, support. It was like the best friends I ever had in my life just were passing by saying, hey, just checking in on you, seeing you're doing okay, off we go. It was such a beautiful experience. I started crying, and I cried till the craft flew out of sight. And I'm on a couple TV shows talking about this. People laugh at me because, it's like, why would you cry at a UFO? It was this incredible feeling of community and hope and peace. And I don't know if it came from the craft, it came from me, if it came from the universe. I'm going to credit the craft because it was just when these lights were right over my head that I felt that. And that has stayed with me ever since. I have no idea who was in it. I have no idea where it was built or where it went or where it's from, but it was a solid piece of machinery that was built by master craftspersons from somewhere. People say it's flares, but it wasn't. There was another sighting a few hours later that went a different trajectory, and those might have been flares.
Wow. So the first thing that actually I really thought of, that I really never thought about this before, but we're sitting here having this conversation in 2025. Technology, especially artificial intelligence, is advancing rapidly. Is it possible that that was a future version of ourselves having contact with a past version and just expressing the love that we would have for ourselves from the future?
What a great idea. What a great insight. It absolutely could be. I have no answers. Of all the people I've talked to, and it's been quite a few that saw the craft, no one had a negative side effect. Nobody was fearful of it. Nobody had anything negative, but positive experiences. And some of them are coming up years later that all at once now they're starting to get insight into out of the body travel or past memories or something from seeing or being around the Phoenix lights. So it very well could have been. I keep it open. I'm looking for it to come back, but what a great experience that was. It's the only craft I've ever seen. It's the only UFO I ever seen, and I was front row middle. I got the best sight of anybody. And maybe that's why I got this incredible loving download, from the craft. I don't know. I don't know. But it wasn't flares.
Have you had any encounter or experience either in a meditation or mentally where you think you may have reconnected with them after this experience in 1997?
Yeah. I would say generally, and I can't believe I'm not crying now. Generally, when I talk about it, I just break down and cry. It's just this loving, wonderful connection that I feel with them, the universe, whatever. It was like a key. It was like somebody came with a key and opened a lock. And I've had all these wonderful experiences throughout my life. And I'm sure one experience, connects with the other, and we unfold step by step, like turning one page after another, and you read more. That was a major, it was a spiritual event. It was a physical sighting It was a physical craft, but I got a spiritual outcome in it. And was that me? Was that them? Was it together? I don't know. I don't know, but no, yeah, it was a marvelous experience. I wish I could put it in a can and spray everybody back. That if I could do that, that would be my gift for the world. So and before that, every now and then when I'd be driving and I'd honk at people that are going too slow. And from that moment, March 13th, 1997, I have never honked my horn since. And I let people cut in line more. And I'm in the grocery store here, and you can go ahead. It's just all tension and pressure has been gone. It
Wow.
was, and it was instant. And my friends noticed it. My coworkers noticed it. I mean, I'm a hospice nurse. You got to be a nice guy. But, every now and then, you get a little rage would come up at day to day.
We're still human. We're still having this human experience.
But from that moment on, all of that went. It's just, I live alone and I sit in my house alone and I smile for no reason
Mm.
myself. And that's been 38 or 28 years now. It's just
Wow.
a joyous state for when that craft just went right over my head. Something's going on and it's beautiful.
So, David, have you had any insights? Because there are a lot of people who talk about they believe that there are events that are going to reveal themselves and will connect us to these higher intelligences sometime in 2026, 2027, 2028. Those are the years that have been named that I've heard. Do you have any insights or feelings about that?
Well, I've been hearing that all my life. Kind of again, because my mom and my parents were all into spiritual different studies. So I remember hearing that, well, in 1973, everything is going to be rebuilt. And then it's 1974, everything will be rebuilt. I think the kicker is, I think the universe, the way it manifests often to me is like a giggly, warm little child or a little puppy that wants to play. And
Mm.
and it comes in little happy things. And I think that touching our attention in some way to again remove what blocks us from seeing the light and participating and playing with the light is the message that comes through that I keep getting. And it's already there. It's already revealed. It's already on stage. I mean, it's already told its story. I think it's waiting not to come down to our level, but for us to take a step up to its level,
Yeah.
more eye to eye. And it's patient. And it gives us these little gems every now and then. I'm here, I'm waiting. I've sent you thousands of messages. When are you going to pay attention? You know, so
So, based on all of these experiences, you having your own near death experience as a child, you having all of these witnessing death experiences as a hospice nurse, connecting to people in spirit, what do you feel about death? Are you afraid of death?
I would, if being a nurse, I would be concerned of pain. I totally understand that. And sometimes the dying experience is very messy. Again, Jonestown. I mean, what a thing that they had to go through at the moment. And I don't know. I don't want to minimize what they went through, but maybe it's an experience that they needed to have. And if nothing else, it is an experience that they had, but that's in the past. They're elsewhere now. I'm not afraid of death. And I've had the out of body experiences and I've seen all these wonderful things with my patients. They have shared so much with me during their dying experience that for whatever reason, some things I think lessons we have to learn at all levels simultaneously. So you would think that, well, once you die, well, the universe is revealed to you. I don't know, but I feel that we need to learn some things spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically while we're still in the body for some reason. The universe wants us. There's lessons that we have to learn at all levels at the same time. And maybe as we go on, there's lessons we learn that we only need to in the spiritual level. And that's just what feels good to me. That's kind of the image that comes to me. You know,
Wow.
do you have time for one more?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
This one is, oh my gosh, I got to tell this at a nursing conference. And some people just applauded. Some people look at me like I was crazy, which is fine. My grandmother used to say, because I saw spirits as a child, as did she and everyone else. And I would, come home from school and I say, well, people think I'm crazy because I told them about seeing a spirit. And my grandmother would say, well, good, it'll give them something to talk about over supper.
That's cute.
And that little one-liner has gotten me all through life because, people think I'm nuts or something. Well, okay. Well, you guys talk about it over dinner. I'm going to be happy. But I was working at a 10-bed inpatient adult hospice, inpatient unit in Mesa. And there was this one patient, she was comatose by the time I got there. And there was just some connection I had with her. I don't know what. I remember looking up her name and I never heard of her before, but there was just something about her I really liked. Um, and what we would do, we had 10 private rooms and we'd go from patient to patient to patient and turn them and clean them and give them medicine and, fluff their pillow and change the linen, do whatever we had. We'd do all 10 patients, do a little paperwork, and then we'd start again and just go around. We took such good care of our patients. So anyway, somebody needed something down the hallway. And I'm going down the hallway. And as I walk down the rooms, I look in each room, make sure everybody's okay. And this woman that was in a coma is now sitting up at the side of the bed. Is looking great. Her hair's done. And, she just looks young and she's smiling. And I walk by her room and I look at her. Oh, you're doing good. And I walk down the hallway. And then I stop. It's like, we had just taken care of her. She's in a coma. What's she doing sitting up at the side of the bed? She's not supposed to be doing that. She's hospice. So I take some steps backwards and thinking, what did I just see? And I look in the room and she's back in bed. The back of the bed, she's non-responsive. The side rails are up again as we had left her. But when I had just walked by, the side rails were down and she was sitting on the side of the bed and she had 2 legs. Well, we had just cleaned her and taken care of her. She had 1 leg amputated a long time ago, clear up at the hip. She only had 1 leg. But I just walked by her and she had 2 legs. And I just thought, oh my gosh, she's getting ready to go. She just showed me her soul before she died. The body's still alive. Soul's getting up and stretching its wings and getting ready to move. She looked like half her age. She was smiling. She looked great. 2 legs and just grinning, ear to ear. So I went up to her and I said, well, you're ready to go. Thank you for showing me this. Get ready, go. You're here in a hospice. We'll do all the, whatever needs to be done on our side. You get ready and stretch your wings and go. So I tell my coworkers, they've seen stuff like this too. And I think, well, that's really cool. So at the end of the shift, I go home. She's still with us. And when I get home, I'm going down the hallway and she's standing in my hallway. And she looks fabulous. I mean, now she looks like she's in her 20s. Her hair was thick and bouncy and fluffy. And she had like a robe or something on and just smiling. And I just stood there and just said, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Why you chose me to show me your soul before you died. And I think now you're probably already gone, to show me your soul now. And yeah, she just faded away and she was gone. So I get on the phone and I call work. I said, you need to go check on the lady in room 2. I think she just died. They said, we were just in there. She's fine. They said, no. Yeah, go check on her. So they put the phone down. They walked in. She was dead. She had just died. Probably like in the last 15 minutes or so, she died. And for whatever reason, this woman picked me, of all people, to show her soul before and after death. I don't know why. I would imagine she'd have friends and family to go visit or something, but she showed me. And what an experience that was. What a blessing that was. What she gave me, my patient gave me that gift. And I truly think of her every single day. What a wonderful thing to have shared with me. And now I get to share it with so many others.
Yes. And I think that that's the strength, that's the gold nugget that you
Mhm.
share with people, the wisdom that you've accumulated. But boy, talk about bringing your work home, David.
She came home,
She
packed
did.
herself up and came. It's like, well, do it. I've
Mhm.
had multiple patients show up every now and then, and especially from the AIDS unit, because those people were so rejected by society and their
Sure.
families, and we just loved them. It was a magical place. Well, we were open for 3 years and it closed.
You're such a beautiful person. I love the emotion, the heart that you wear in your sleeve. It just makes you even more beautiful inside and out. And I would imagine that people who are watching are going to want to connect with you. So, how do people connect with you?
I have a channel on YouTube. It's
I
Uncle
didn't know
Dave's.
that.
You didn't know that?
No.
It's Uncle Dave's Kitchen. I love to cook, and I was going to do a cooking channel. And I thought, you know what? I've got all these spirit encounters. Why not do videos about that? So I haven't done a single cooking show yet. I, I've only
But
got
I
it,
love that you called it the kitchen anyway.
but I will. I promise that, when I worked at one hospice inpatient unit, it would get quiet at night. I'd make cinnamon rolls.
Oh,
And
I love cinnamon rolls. I don't live that far from you, so
right,
maybe I'll be one of the guinea pigs. I'll be a taster. I'll volunteer to be a taster.
so I'd make it for the family members, in the darkness of night, we'd have wonderful cinnamon rolls and it would bring all the families together and support each other. So I need to do the cinnamon roll.
Well, David, this has been a delight. I looked down at my phone. I track these because of how I do the editing, and I looked down and it was 1:11 and 11 seconds.
Oh, it's my favorite time.
It's a good time.
11.
So I want to thank you, and the universe apparently wants to thank you for what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
Right. We're all little soldiers.
World War Soldiers. And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, listen, and share these experiences. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here.